Have you ever believed that a box of chocolates could kill someone? I didn't either, until my husband nearly died in our kitchen just hours after eating a special birthday gift sent by his mother. Sweet wishes and gentle smiles were nothing more than a mask for a carefully planned scheme that had been brewing for years. No one would have guessed that the woman who once cradled her son in her arms could also be the one plotting to take his life. The story I'm about to share isn't a movie. It's real. And it might be a warning for anyone trying too hard to please a family that never truly accepts you. The summer heat clung to everything in our small Charleston apartment. It seeped through the cracks of the old windows and wrapped itself around the walls, no matter how hard the air conditioner roared from the corner of the living room. I had my MacBook open on the kitchen table, where a web design layout filled the screen. It was for a boutique client I had picked up last week. Freelancing had its struggles, but slowly I was building something of my, that quiet kind of something that didn't shout, but made me proud just the same. Across the room, David called out from the couch, his voice half lost beneath the hum of the fan. "Bri, there's a message from my mom." I didn't stop typing, but I felt it immediately in my shoulders like a quiet pinch. Messages from Evelyn always came laced with tension, no matter how nicely worded. "What's she saying?" I asked, still staring at the screen, trying to sound neutral. David glanced at his phone. "She wants us to come over for dinner next Sunday. Says she wants to celebrate your birthday." I paused, letting out a breath that felt heavier than it should have. Evelyn Morgan had a way of speaking that sounded polite, even friendly, but I never knew what was behind her smile. After 5 years of marriage, I still hadn't found anything warm in her eyes. "If you want to go, we'll go," I said, turning to look at David. His expression softened, and I could tell he was genuinely happy about the invitation. That made it harder somehow. He smiled and said, "She mentioned recently that you've grown into a good wife." I gave him a small nod, but inside I wondered what Evelyn really meant by that, and whether she'd ever meant it at all. Later that night, after the dinner invitation had settled into the corners of my mind like unwanted dust, I sat beside David as he scrolled through the latest news on his tablet. The TV played low in the background, but I barely noticed it. I was thinking about Evelyn and what she might really be planning for my birthday. "She's been trying more lately, hasn't she?" David said, still looking at his screen, but I could hear the hope in his voice. "Maybe," I said softly, "though I don't know what trying really means with your mom." He turned toward me. "She said the other day she thinks you've become part of the family, that you've settled in well." That word "settled" felt like a stone dropped into water. It made ripples that didn't sit right. I thought about all the dinners where I tried to contribute and was told the food needed less seasoning or more butter. I remembered the way Evelyn would offer me tea with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and the time she said, "Oh, what a shame you don't come from a big family yourself." Then there was Erica. She never said much, but her eyes always said enough. Cold, unreadable, sharp, like they were measuring me and always finding me lacking. "Erica's still living with her?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. "Yeah, for now. She's between things again. She said she might go back to grad school." I nodded, not because I had anything to agree with, but because it was easier than picking apart the silence between us. A few days later, I met my friend Clara for coffee at a little spot near the market. David was out golfing with a client, and I needed the kind of conversation only Clara could give me. She didn't sugarcoat anything. "So you're really going back to Evelyn's for your birthday?" she asked as she stirred her coffee. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I know how it sounds. I just think David wants things to be peaceful." "And what do you want?" I hesitated, then shrugged. "I want him to be happy." Clara looked at me sharply. "You are his wife, Bray. You are his family now. Or is that something Evelyn just pretends to forget?" Her words hit hard because they weren't exaggerated. They were true in that quiet way the truth sneaks up on you. She doesn't say anything outright. She never has to. She just lets me know I'm not really one of them. Clara reached across the table and held my hand. Just be careful, some people never really mean to let you in. As I walked home later, her words echoed with every step. There were things I wanted to believe, but a part of me already knew the answer. The morning of my birthday started with soft sunlight bleeding through the blinds and the distant sound of seagulls over Charleston's rooftops. I was still in my pajamas frying eggs in the kitchen when the intercom buzzed. "Delivery for Brianna Carter," the voice crackled through the speaker. I dried my hands and buzzed them in. At the door stood a man in a navy uniform holding a small refrigerated box. The moment I saw the sender's name printed on the label, my stomach tensed. Evelyn Morgan. "Mason," I called out, "your mom sent something." He appeared in the hallway with a towel wrapped around his neck and water dripping from his curls. "Must be your birthday present." We opened the box together. Inside was a sleek black container with gold lettering etched across the top. La Belle Maison, a local chocolate boutique known for their handcrafted confections. A place where a single truffle could cost as much as a dinner. "Wow," Mason said, lifting the lid. "These go for over $100 a box. Mom's going all out." The inside was a display of perfect geometry. Domes and squares and hearts made of glossy chocolate arranged on dark velvet. Tucked beside them was a handwritten card. "Specially chosen just for you." "Very thoughtful," I said with a light smile. "I'll enjoy them later." Mason gave me a curious glance but didn't press. I left the chocolates on the side table and went back to cleaning up breakfast. That evening, he insisted on making dinner. He set out candles and opened a bottle of red wine and plated everything with the kind of effort he usually saved for anniversaries. After we finished, he lifted the chocolate box again. "Dessert?" "I'm stuffed," I said, as I sank into the couch. "Just one," he said as he bit into a dark square. "These are amazing. Seriously. Try one." "Maybe tomorrow," I said. I want to savor them. But he was already reaching for another. And then, another. I watched him from the sofa, his eyes still full of celebration and warmth. He was so happy to see a gift from his mother that looked like acceptance. That alone had made the chocolates worth keeping around. Later I took a long shower and went to bed early. Mason stayed up to watch a game, and when I woke the next morning, the chocolate box was empty on the coffee table. "Mason," I called from the kitchen, "did you eat all of them?" He looked up from his coffee with a guilty smile. "I didn't mean to, I just kept snacking. They were addictive." I chuckled. "Well, you owe me a new box." Just then the phone rang. "Evelyn." I picked up. "Good morning." "Happy belated birthday, dear," she said. Her tone was unusually chipper. "I assume the package arrived?" "It did," I said lightly. "Mason got to them first, though. He ate the whole box." There was a pause. Then her voice lost that cheery rhythm. "He ate all of them?" "Yes, last night." "I see." It was such a small response, but something in the way her voice dropped chilled me. She was no longer smiling. After the call, I tried to shake it off. Maybe she was just disappointed I hadn't tried one myself. Maybe it meant nothing. But not long after that, Mason grew quiet. He held his stomach as he walked to the bathroom, and then the sound of retching echoed down the hall. I rushed to him. His forehead was hot, his face had turned pale, his hands trembled as he leaned against the sink. "Call someone," he whispered. "I don't feel right." My hands moved before I could think. I dialed for help as my pulse pounded in my ears. And all I could think about was that box of chocolates. The ambulance lights cut across the early morning haze as we sped through the Charleston streets. I sat beside Mason, gripping his hand, which was slick with cold sweat. His lips were dry and his face had turned a strange shade of gray. The paramedics moved quickly, speaking in clipped voices that I barely registered. "It's going to be okay," I whispered, though I didn't know if that was true. At the hospital, Mason was rushed into a treatment room and I was left in the waiting area, filling out forms with shaking hands. I kept glancing at the entrance, half expecting Evelyn to burst through the doors, though I had not called her again. When my phone vibrated, I saw 5 missed calls from her and 1 from Erica. Just as I was about to call back, Evelyn appeared through the front doors. Erica was right behind her. "Where is he?" Evelyn asked breathlessly. Her eyes were wild and her hair looked like she had left the house in a hurry. "They're treating him now," I said. "They're not sure what happened yet. It all happened so fast." Evelyn's gaze darted across the room, then landed on me. "What did he eat? What did you give him?" I stared at her, stunned. "The chocolates. From you." Something changed in her face. Erica flinched. Ate those?" Evelyn asked, her voice now a low murmur. "Yes, all of them." I watched their reactions closely. Erica's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Evelyn looked toward the nurse's desk, then quickly away. There was something unspoken between them, something alive and twitching beneath their expression. A doctor approached. "Mrs. Carter, we have some initial results. Your husband is experiencing severe food poisoning symptoms, but there are markers in his system that are unusual. We're running toxin screens to be sure." "Toxins?" I echoed. The word hung in the air like smoke. "Anything he ate that stood out recently?" I hesitated, then said, "He ate a full box of luxury chocolates last night. They came in the mail from his mother." The doctor frowned. "We'll need that packaging. It may help identify what caused this reaction." Erica stepped forward quickly. "I'll go. I remember the address." I looked at her suspiciously but nodded. At that moment, I couldn't think clearly enough to argue. About 20 minutes later, a man in plain clothes arrived and introduced himself as Detective Ruiz. He asked to speak with me and took down everything I could remember from the night before. When I told him about the chocolates, his eyes narrowed slightly. "Where did they come from?" "From his mother," I said. "She said they were hand-picked for me, but Mason ate them instead." "Do you still have the chocolates?" "No, Erica went to retrieve the box, but I don't know if she found it." The detective turned to Evelyn, who had been sitting silently nearby. "Where did you buy them?" "La Belle Maison," she answered quietly. "But I don't see how this is relevant. It was a birthday gift." "We're just ruling out all possibilities," the detective replied. "Any unusual ingredients? Allergens?" "I wouldn't know," she said. Erica returned nearly 2 hours later. She was empty-handed. "I couldn't find the box," she said. "Maybe it got tossed." "It was on the table when I left this morning," I said slowly. "You're sure it wasn't there?" "No," she replied without looking at me. The detective studied her face for a long moment, then made a note in his pad. "We'll need access to your apartment, just to confirm." I handed him my key. I needed air. I walked down the corridor looking for the restroom. As I passed a private consultation room, I heard voices. "Mom, the plan is ruined." It was Erica's voice. "Keep your voice down, she could be nearby," Evelyn hissed. "What do we do if they investigate? You threw the box, right?" "Yes, now stop talking, just act like you know nothing. Mason will recover." It wasn't enough. I stopped breathing. My feet froze in place. My heart thundered in my ears. They had planned this. I backed away slowly and returned to the waiting room. My legs felt like they weren't part of me. A while later, Detective Ruiz returned. We recovered the chocolate box from the building's trash and another identical box from a vehicle registered to Erica. Both are being tested. I looked at Evelyn. Her lips were pressed into a tight line. Erica's face had gone white. "There were substances inside the chocolates that appear to be toxic," he said. "We're taking you both in for questioning on suspicion of attempted murder." As they were escorted out, Evelyn looked back at me. "You don't belong in our family." I said nothing. I didn't need to. Because now I finally understood what had been hidden behind every forced smile and every polite word. And nothing would ever be the same again. Mason was discharged from the hospital 5 days later. He had lost weight and looked like he was holding himself together with threads. His steps were slow and his voice came out quieter than I had ever heard it. The doctor said he had been poisoned with a compound that took time to leave the system, but the worst was behind us. He didn't speak much on the drive home. The city passed by the window like a blur I couldn't connect to anymore. That night, after he had fallen asleep on the couch, I sat beside him and held his hand. "Mason," I whispered, "we need to go to your mother's house." His eyes opened slowly. "Why?" "To find proof. This wasn't the first time, I know it." He sat up and looked at me like he wanted to argue, but no words came out. He nodded instead. The next morning, he used a spare key and we let ourselves into Evelyn's house while she and Erica were at their lawyer's office. The house smelled of lavender and furniture polish just like always. It was too clean, too perfect, like nothing terrible had ever happened inside. We started upstairs. Her bedroom looked exactly the same as the last time I had been there. Framed pictures of Mason lined the dresser. None of us together, not a single one. I opened the closet and pulled down boxes from the upper shelves, but there was nothing useful inside. I turned to her desk. "It's locked," I said. Mason knelt beside it and jiggled the drawer handles until one of them popped loose. Inside was a row of file folders, each one labeled in her careful handwriting. I opened one labeled Policies and felt the blood drain from my face. "Mason," I said, "look." He knelt beside me. The folder held copies of his new life insurance documents, the ones he had mentioned last month. The beneficiaries were split between me and Evelyn, but beside my name was a small note in pencil, "To be revised." My hands trembled as I flipped to the next sheet. "This is mine," I said. "This is in my name." It was a policy I had no memory of signing. The amount was high. The beneficiaries listed were Evelyn and Erica. "When did this happen?" I asked. "I don't know," Mason said. "Mom said she was handling the paperwork. She told me everything was done properly." The realization sank into my stomach like a stone. She had been planning for longer than we imagined. I stood up and began searching the drawers. From under a false panel, I pulled out a small wooden box. Inside were photos of me. In some of them I was smiling at the beach or in the garden behind our apartment. But they weren't just pictures. Each one had something done to it. Small sewing needles stuck through the corners, scorch marks, symbols I didn't recognize drawn in dark ink. "What the hell is this?" Mason said, standing behind me. I opened a second drawer and found a velvet pouch filled with dried herbs, tiny bottles with labels that read sleeproot and whitethorn. My heart pounded as I moved to the laptop on her desk. "It's password protected," I said. "Try her birthday," Mason said. It worked. The screen opened to a browser history that made me shudder. Slow-acting household poisons, how to mask symptoms, life insurance fraud examples. Mason backed away from the desk and sat down in the armchair. "She really wanted you gone," he said. "I can't believe this." I didn't speak. I couldn't. Then we heard the door creak open. We both froze. Erica's voice rang out. "What are you doing in here?" We turned to see her standing in the doorway, her purse slung over one shoulder. Her expression shifted from surprise to fury in an instant. "You have no right to be here," she snapped. I held up the papers. "We found enough, and the police will see all of it." "There's no proof of anything," she said quickly. "You don't know what you're looking at." Mason stepped forward, his face pale. "Why, Erica? Why would you and Mom go this far?" Her face twisted. "Because everything changed after you married her. She ruined our family. She took you away." "No," Mason said, his voice firm. "You pushed me away, you and Mom. This is not how family treats each other. Mom was in debt. She took out loans in your name. She did everything for this family," Erica said. "You were supposed to help, not leave us." I opened the drawer again and held out a paper. This is a credit agreement in Mason's name. The address is your mother's. She forged this." Erica's mouth opened, then shut again. "Get out," Mason said. "Now, before I call the detective." Her eyes darted toward the laptop, then to the box in my hands. "This isn't over," she said. We didn't respond. She left without slamming the door, just that eerie silence that came after she disappeared down the hall. Mason's phone rang. He answered slowly. After a moment he looked at me. "She confessed." "Mom told the police everything." I nodded. Not because I felt relief, not yet, but because the truth had finally surfaced. And there was nowhere left for it to hide. The courthouse steps felt heavier than I expected them to. The sun was bright that afternoon, the kind that shimmered off the pavement in waves. Mason stood beside me in a clean navy suit, his hand holding mine, as we walked away from the doors that had just delivered our final piece of closure. The judge had sentenced Evelyn to 5 years in prison for attempted assault and conspiracy. The prosecution had presented the insurance fraud, the poison searches, the altered policy documents, and even the disturbing photos. Erica had accepted a plea deal and received 3 years probation. Her attorney had argued that she acted under influence and pressure, and the court believed there was enough uncertainty in her role to offer leniency. I did not feel the same, but I also knew nothing she could face in a courtroom would compare to the guilt I hoped she carried. We didn't speak much on the drive back to the apartment. The air felt thinner, the world quieter. Not because everything was fine, but because the shouting in my chest had gone still. A week later, we loaded our belongings into a rented truck and left Charleston. We didn't say goodbye to anyone. There was nothing left behind worth keeping. Mason had found a job with a small financial services firm in a quiet town in Connecticut. The pay would be less, but he said he needed a life with slower rhythms. I had already reached out to a couple of local business owners who needed website work. It felt like starting over, but not in the way it used to. This time it was our choice. Our new home was a small 2-bedroom house with pale blue shutters and an oak tree that shaded the front porch. I spent the first few days painting the walls soft colors that made the space feel like it could breathe again. Mason put together furniture in the evenings while music played low from the radio. We made dinners together, sometimes in silence, and sometimes laughing at things that didn't matter. Those moments meant the most. 3 weeks after we moved, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Erica. Her handwriting was neat, but her words were full of weight. She wrote that she had been living under our mother's shadow for so long that she couldn't remember who she had been before it. She said she wanted to change. She wanted to look at herself without Evelyn's voice shaping her every thought. I read the letter twice, then placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond. I didn't know if I ever would. We visited Evelyn once. She looked different in that prison cafeteria. Her hair had thinned, her eyes looked hollow, and her posture no longer held the sharp confidence I remembered. She tried to apologize to me, but it didn't sound like an apology. It sounded like regret without ownership. I nodded but said nothing. Mason stood beside me and said only one thing: we needed to see this. Outside the prison gates, I breathed in the cold wind and felt something slide off my chest. Not forgiveness, but distance. Back at home on a rainy morning while I was folding laundry, Mason sat beside me on the bed. His eyes searched mine for something he hadn't asked for yet. "There's something I haven't told you," I said. His brow lifted just slightly. "I took a test last week. We're going to be a family of 3. For a long moment he didn't say anything. Then his eyes shimmered in that soft way they did when he was truly overwhelmed. He took my hands in his. "Really?" "In about 6 months," I said. He leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. "I don't know what kind of parents we'll be, but I know we'll protect this child better than anyone ever protected us." That night we lay in bed with the window cracked open, listening to the wind in the trees. I felt his fingers intertwine with mine. For the first time in years, I was not waiting for something to go wrong. I was just breathing and letting myself believe. We had survived something ugly, something sharp and hard, and now we were beginning again, slowly, quietly, with hope stitched into every corner of our new life. What we went through taught me more than I ever expected to learn about trust, boundaries, and listening to my instincts. Sometimes the people who smile the most hide the deepest malice, and love is not always enough to change them. I learned that silence in the face of manipulation only feeds it, and that protecting your peace sometimes means walking away from people who share your blood. In real life, we often dismiss our discomfort as overthinking or try to maintain peace by staying quiet, but true peace only comes when we stand up for ourselves. Documentation matters, small signs add up, and intuition is rarely wrong. But more than anything, I learned that healing is possible. New beginnings are not always clean or easy, but they are always worth it. And if you are lucky enough to find someone who stands beside you when the world turns, hold on tight and build something stronger.